city named Nazareth, that there might be fulfilled what was spoken through the prophets. He will be called a Nazarene. Mount 2. 19-23. Nazareth is not mentioned in the Hebrew scriptures. Some suppose Matthew had reference to some lost prophetic book or some unwritten tradition, but his expression, spoken through the prophets, is used by writers of the Christian Greek scriptures only in reference to the same canonical collection of the Hebrew scriptures we have today. The key to understanding, apparently, lies in equating Nazarene with Enitza, mentioned above as meaning sprout. With this in mind, it is evident that Matthew was referring to what Isaiah 11:1 had said concerning Messiah. There must go forth a twig out of the stump of Jesse, and out of his roots a sprout where Enitza will be fruitful. Another Hebrew word, Simark, also means sprout and was used by other prophets when referring to the Messiah. Matthew used the plural, saying that prophets had mentioned this coming sprout. For example, Jeremiah wrote about the righteous sprout as an offshoot of David. J 23. 5. 33. 15. Zechariah describes a king priest whose name is Sprout, a prophecy that could apply only to Jesus the Nazarene, the great spiritual temple builder. Zech 3. 8. 6. 12, 13. Nazareth Nazar probably, Sprouton. A city in Lower Galilee where Jesus lived most of his earthly life, along with his half-brothers and half-sisters. Lu 2. 51, 52. Mount 13. 54-56. Both Joseph and Mary were residents of Nazareth when Gabriel announced the approaching birth of Jesus. Lu 1. 26, 27. 2. 4, 39. Later, after their return from Egypt, they took up residence in Nazareth again. Mount 2. 19-23. Lu 2. 39. Location. Most scholars identify Nazareth with An-Nasara Nazaret in Galilee. Pictures, Volume 2, p. 539. If this view is correct, Nazareth was situated in the low mountains just end of the valley of Jezreel and approximately halfway between the east tip of the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean coast. It was in a mountain basin with hills rising 120 to 150 meters, 400 to 500 feet above it. The area was well populated, with a number of cities and towns near Nazareth. Also, it is estimated that one could walk from Nazareth to Ptolemais on the Mediterranean coast in 7 hours, to Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee in 5 hours, and to Jerusalem in 3 days. On one occasion people of Nazareth sought to throw Jesus from the brow of the mountain upon which their city had been built. Lu 4. 29. That is not to say that Nazareth was on the very brow or edge, but that it was on a mountain having a brow from which they wanted to hurl Jesus. Some have identified it with a rocky cliff some 12 meters, 40 feet high located of the city. Prominence of Nazareth. It is difficult to say with certainty just how prominent Nazareth was in the 1st century. The most common view of commentators is that Nazareth was then textoi acute miritra longo Nazirat 477 court of the Sanhedrin. Nonetheless, whatever its size and prominence, Nazareth was convenient to important trade routes and main cities, and so its inhabitants would have had ready information about the social, religious, and political activities of the time. Compare Lu 4. 23. Attitude of the people. As Jesus grew up, he progressed in favor with God and men. Lu 2. 52. He and his half-brothers and half-sisters were known by the people of Nazareth, and it was his custom to attend the local synagogue each week. Mount 13. 55, 56. Lu 4. 16. When he was about 30 years of age, Jesus left Nazareth and was baptized by John. Mr. 1. 9. Lu 3. 23. Some months later, near the start of his Galilean ministry, Jesus returned to Nazareth and in the synagogue read aloud Isaiah 61. 1, 2, applying it to himself. The people manifested a lack of faith and attempted to kill him, but he went through the midst of them and continued on his way, taking up residence in Capernaum. Lu 4. 16-30. Mount 4. 13. Over a year later, Christ again visited Nazareth. Mount 13. 54-58. Mr. 6. 1-6. Though some have thought this to be the same occasion as in Luke 4. 16-30, the order of events in Matthew, Mark, and Luke indicates otherwise, as does the fact that Jesus' activities and the results were somewhat different. His fame may have grown by this time so that a somewhat more hospitable reception was granted him. Though many stumbled over the fact that he was a local man, there is no mention of the people's trying to kill him this time. He performed some powerful works, but not many, because of the people's lack of faith. Mount 13. 57-58. Jesus then left and began his third circuit of Galilee. Mr. 6. 6. Nazirite Nazi middle dot right 1 singled out. Dedicated 1. Separated 1. There were two classes of Nazirites. Those who volunteered and those who were such by divine appointment. The regulations governing volunteer Nazirites are found in the Book of Numbers, chapter 6. Either men or women could take a special vow to Jehovah to live as Nazirites for a period of time. However, if a daughter's father or a wife's husband heard the vow and did not approve, he could cancel it. New 30. 1-8. There were three principal restrictions resting on those taking the Nazirite vow. 1. They were to drink no intoxicating beverage. Neither were they to eat any product of the grapevine, whether unripe, ripe, or dried, nor drink any of its juice, whether in the fresh, fermented, or vinegar state. 2. They were not to cut the hair of their heads. 3. They were not to touch a dead body, even that of the closest relative. Father, mother, brother, or sister. New 6. 1-7. Special vows. The person taking this special vow was to live as a Nazirite, that is, dedicated, separated to Jehovah, and not for the plaudits of men due to a showy display of fanatical asceticism. Rather, all the days of his Naziriteship he is holy to Jehovah. New 6. 2-8. Compare GE 49. 26, FTN. The requirements laid on Nazirites, therefore, had special significance and meaning in the worship of Jehovah. Like the high priest who, because of his holy office, was to touch no dead body, not even that of one of his closest relatives, so too the Nazirite. The high priest and the under-priests, because of the serious responsibility of their offices, were forbidden to drink wine or intoxicating liquor when performing their sacred duties before Jehovah. Lot 10. 8-11. 21. 10-11. Furthermore, the Nazirite Heb. Namidl.z should prove holy by letting the locks of the hair of his head grow, such serving as a crowning sign by which all could quickly recognize his holy Naziriteship. New 6. 5. The same Hebrew word Nazir was used in regard to the unpruned vines during the sacred Sabbath and Jubilee years. 25. 5-11. Interesting too is the fact that the gold plate on the front of the turban of the high priest, engraved with the words "Holiness belongs to Jehovah," was called do textoi acute miritra longo, near 478, one serving as a sin offering, the other serving as a burnt sacrifice. He was also to present a young ram as a guilt offering. Furthermore, the one having taken the vow of Naziriteship must now begin all over again, counting the days of the vow as stipulated at the start. New 6. 8-12. Requirements at conclusion of vow. When the specified duration of the vow came to an end, the Nazirite presented himself to the priests before the tent of meeting, bringing along the prescribed sacrifices consisting of a young ram for a burnt offering, a female lamb for a sin offering, and a ram for a communion sacrifice. He also was to bring a basket of unfermented unleavened cakes and wafers that were well oiled, together with the proper grain and drink offerings. In addition to these necessary sacrifices, the Nazirite brought such other offerings to the sanctuary as he could afford. New 6. 13-17, 21. Next, the Nazirite had his long hair cut off, and it was placed on the fire under the communion sacrifice. Then portions of the offerings were placed in his hands by the officiating priest and waved by the priest as a wave offering before Jehovah. New 6. 18-20. It appears that in time the Jews made it possible for wealthy individuals to provide the necessary sacrifices, as an act of charity, for persons of little means who desired to take the Nazirite vow. This seemed to be the recognized custom that the Apostle Paul took advantage of upon arriving in Jerusalem at the end of his third tour, to allay the false rumors that Paul had been teaching all the Jews among the nations not to walk in the solemn customs of the Jewish nation. Paul's Christian brothers recommended the following plan. "We have 4 men with a vow upon themselves," they told Paul. "Take these men along and cleanse yourself ceremonially with them and take care of their expenses, that they may have their heads shaved." Act 21. 20-26. As to the length of time that one might be a Nazirite, this was optional with the one making the vow. Jewish tradition, not the Bible, said it could not be less than 30 days, for it was thought that anything less than that degraded the solemnity of the vow, making it commonplace. Lifetime Nazirites. In the case of those appointed as Nazirites by Jehovah for life, being singled out by him for special service, they took no vows and were not bound by a limited period of time, the days of which were recalculated from the beginning if the vow was broken before being completed. For these reasons Jehovah's commandments for them differed somewhat from his requirements for voluntary Nazirites. Samson was such a God-appointed lifetime Nazirite, having been divinely appointed to be such before his conception. Even with his mother it was not a discretionary matter. Because her son would be a Nazirite, she was commanded by the angel to observe special regulations. Not to drink wine or intoxicating liquor or to eat anything unclean during her pregnancy. JG 13. 2-14. 16. 17. Regarding Samson, the regulation was that no razor should come upon his head. JG 13. 5. However, no prohibition was placed on his touching dead bodies. Hence, Samson's killing a lion, or his slaying 30 Philistines and then stripping the corpses of their garments, did not profane his Naziriteship. On still another occasion, with God's approval, he killed 1,000 of the enemy with the jawbone of a male ass. 1 heap, 2 heaps. JG 14. 6, 19. 15. 14-16. In Samuel's case it was his mother, Hannah, who made a vow, setting apart her yet unconceived child for Jehovah's service as a Nazirite. To God she said in prayer, "If you will without fail give to your slave girl a male offspring, I will give him to Jehovah all the days of his life, and he shall drink no wine nor strong drink." 1 Chiwan. 11. LXX, and no razor will come upon his head. 1 Sawan. 9-11, 22, 28. John the Baptist was to drink no wine, and strong otex to acute muritra longo. Nepo 479 linked with modern Kavala. This city occupies a rocky promontory at the head of the Gulf of Kavala. Its harbour is situated on the western side, and Kavala itself lies about 15 kilometers 9.5 miles of the ruins of Philippi. Latin inscriptions indicate the city's dependence on Philippi in Roman times, and portions of an aqueduct there appear to be of Roman construction. The Roman-built Egnatian Way connected Neapolis and Philippi and ran westward all the way to Durazzo de Aracises on the Adriatic Sea. It was at Neapolis that the Apostle Paul first entered Europe in response to the call to step over into Macedonia. From there he went to Philippi, this possibly taking him 3 or 4 hours as he crossed the mountain range between the two cities. Act 16. 9-11. About 6 years later Paul doubtless passed through Neapolis again. Act 20. 6. Neariani Ria boy young man of Jah. 1. A Simeonite, son of Ishi. Neariah and his 3 brothers headed a force of 500 men that defeated the Amalekites at Mount Seir and thereafter continued to dwell there. 1 Ch 4. 42, 43. 2. Son of Shemaiah, father of Elione, Hizkiah, and Azrikam, and descendant of David. 1 Ch 3. 1, 22, 23. Nebai possibly from a root meaning thrive. Bear fruit. One of the heads of the people who is descendant, if not he himself, attested by seal the trustworthy arrangement of Nehemiah's day. Ne 9. 38. 10. 1, 14, 19. Nebaioth Ne Baioth. The firstborn of Ishmael's 12 sons and founder of one of the prominent Arabian tribes. GE 25. 13-16. 1ch1. 29-31 Nebaioth's sister Mahalath or possibly Basemath married their cousin Esau. GE 28. 9. 36. 2, 3 The descendants of Nebaioth are not identified as living in any definite locality. They were probably nomads, moving about as Bedouin with their flocks. In the time of Isaiah, the flocks of Kedar was Nebaioth's brother, and the rams of Nebaioth were associated together in a prophecy foretelling how such animals would serve as approved sacrifices on Jehovah's altar. Issa 60. 7. Some scholars have attempted to equate the descendants of Nebaioth with the Nabateans of later times, but the evidence in support of such a suggestion is inconclusive. Nebalat ne Middle.Alat. A place settled by Benjamites after the Babylonian exile. Ne 11. 31, 34 Nebalat is generally identified with Beit Balahorvat Nebalat. Situated on Elo Hill about 6 km 3.5 million of modern Lutherlod, Beit Bala overlooks the send of the plain of Sharon. Nbat and Nebat he has looked at. An Ephraimite and father of King Jeroboam, the first ruler of the 10-tribe kingdom of Israel. 1 Kai 11. 26. 2 Kai 14. 23, 24. Nebo and Nebo. 1. A Moabite city that came under the control of Amorite king Sihon sometime before the Israelites entered the Promised Land. Compare New 21. 26. 32. 3. Issa 15. 2. Subsequent to Israel's defeating Sihon, the Reubenites rebuilt Nebo. New 32. 37, 38 By the early part of the 9th century BCE however, it appears that the Reubenites 1 ch 5. 1, 8 lost the city. 4, on the Moabite stone, King Mesha boasted about having taken it from Israel at the direction of his god Chemosh. Later, both Isaiah in the 8th century BCE and Jeremiah in the 7th century BCE mentioned Nebo in prophecies directed against Moab. Issa 15. 2. Jah 48. 1, 22. Nebo is commonly identified with but Mkayet or Kiryat el-Makiyat, situated about 8 km 5 miles of Heshbon. There are ruins of an ancient fortress at this site. Also, large quantities of pottery fragments thought to date from the 12th to the beginning of the 6th century BCE have been found. 2. A city, representatives of which returned from Babylonian exile. As 2. 1, 29 Apparently to distinguish this Nebo from number 1, it is designated as the other Nebo. Ne 7. 33 Modern Uba, located about 11 km 7 mi NW of Hebron, has been presented as a possible identification. However, O Textoi Acute Muritra Longo, Nebuchadnezzar 484. A deity whose humiliation at the fall of Babylon was foretold by the prophet Isaiah. Issa 46. 1, 2 Nebo was worshipped both in Babylonia and Assyria. He was identified with the planet Mercury and was regarded as the son of Marduk and Subhanatu and the consort of Tashmitam. To his worshippers Nebo was a god of wisdom and learning, the god who possesses intelligence, he who hears from afar, he who teaches, and lord of the tablet stylus. The Seven Great Monarchies of the Ancient Eastern World, by G. Rawlinson, 1885, Volume I, p. 91. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, p. 450. The prominence of this deity is illustrated by the Babylonian king Nabonidus referring to Nebo as the administrator of all the upper and netherworld, who lengthens the span of my life, and also as the one who extends the length of my rule. Nabonidus credited Nebo with placing into his hands the correct scepter, the lawful staff, which alone ensures the aggrandizement of the country. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, p. 310. Another indication of the importance of Nebo in Babylonian religion is the fact that a form of the name appears in the names of the Babylonian kings Nebuchadnezzar, Nabopolassar, and Nabonidus. Also in Nebuzaradan 2 25. 8 and perhaps Abednego. Dar 1. 7. Nebo is prominently associated with the ancient city of Borsippa, modern Burs or Burs Nimrod, near Babylon. In the spring, every New Year's Day, the image of Nebo was taken in sacred procession from Borsippa to Babylon. Thereafter, when the image was returned to its sanctuary at Borsippa, the image of Marduk, also called by his title Bel-Lord, was carried partway along with that of Nebo. It was most appropriate, therefore, that the prophecy of Isaiah specifically mentioned the coming disgrace of Bel and Nebo at Babylon's fall. Isra 46. 1, 2. Nebuchadnezzar neb middle dot u middle dot and middle dot Nezzar, Nebuchadrezzar neb middle dot u middle dot and middle dot Rezzar from Akkadion, meaning O Nebo, protect the heir. Second ruler of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Son of Nabopolassar and father of Marduk Evil-Merodach, who succeeded him to the throne. Nebuchadnezzar ruled as king for 43 years 624-582 BCE, this period including the 7 times during which he ate vegetation like a bull. Darfur. 31-33 To distinguish this monarch from the Babylonian ruler by the same name, but of a much earlier period, the Zend dynasty, historians refer to him as Nebuchadnezzar II. Historical notices in cuneiform inscriptions presently available about Nebuchadnezzar somewhat supplement the Bible record. They state that it was in the 19th year of Nabopolassar's reign that he assembled his army, as did his son Nebuchadnezzar, then crown prince. Both armies evidently functioned independently, and after Nabopolassar went back to Babylon within a month's time, Nebuchadnezzar successfully warred in Mount Venus territory, later returning to Babylon with much spoil. During the 21st year of Nabopolassar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar marched with the Babylonian army to Carchemish, there to fight against the Egyptians. He led his forces to victory. This took place in the 4th year of Judean King Jehoiakim 625 BCE. J 46. 2. The inscriptions further show that news of his father's death brought Nebuchadnezzar back to Babylon, and on the 1st of Elul August-September, he ascended a throne. In this his accession year he returned to Hatu, and in the month Shibat January-February, 624 BCE he took the vast booty of Hatu to Babylon. Assyrian and Babylonian Chronicles, by A.K. Grayson, 1975, p. 100 in 624 BCE. In the first official year of his kingship, Nebuchadnezzar again led his forces through Hatu. He captured and sacked the Philistine city of Ashkelon. See Ashkelon. During his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th years as king he conducted additional campaigns in Hatu, and evidently in the 4th year he made Judean King Jehoiakim Otex to execute Miritra Longo, Nebuchadnezzar 481 craftsmen, and warriors into Babylonian exile. It was Jehoiachin's uncle Mattaniah that Nebuchadnezzar made king of Judah, and he changed Mattaniah's name to Zedekiah. 2 Chi 24. 11-17. 2 Ch 36. 5-10. See chronology. Jehoiachin. Jehoiakim. Sometime later Zedekiah rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, allying himself with Egypt for military protection. S 17. 15. Compare J 27. 11-14. This brought the Babylonians back to Jerusalem, and on Tebeth December-January 10 in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem. 2 Chi 24. 20. 25. 1. 2 Ch 36. 13 However, news that a military force of Pharaoh was coming out of Egypt caused the Babylonians to lift the siege temporarily. J 37. 5 Subsequently Pharaoh's troops were forced to go back to Egypt, and the Babylonians resumed the siege against Jerusalem. J 37. 7-10 Finally, in 607 BCE on Tammuz June-July 9 in the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign, Nebuchadnezzar's 19th year if counting from his accession year,